Hi friends, thank you so much for checking in with your learning for today. The last time we were together, we talked about what is a letter. And a letter is something that we can write to another person, and it's something that they can read. And when we write letters back and forth and share information, it's a way for us to learn about each other. It's a way for us to communicate with each other. Sometimes, boys and girls, writing a letter is the only way to communicate with people if they don't have access to a phone or to internet. And sometimes we just write a letter just for fun, just to say hello and to ask questions and share information. So those are some reasons why we write letters. Last time I sent you off to look at 4 different letters, and I asked you to think about, what do these letters look like? And 2, what do these letters all have in common? So boys and girls, I have these 4 letters here, and I'll show you those letters quickly, all right? Our first letter, I noticed, had a date. It said, Dear Arthur. Then it had a lot of information. And then at the end, it said, Your friend, and the person's name, Sally. Sally is the person who wrote the letter. So we have a date. We have telling who is the letter for, Dear Arthur. We have information here in the letter. And then from your friend, Sally. Let's look at our other letters and see what they have in common. On this letter, it's a letter to the mayor. I notice there's also a date. It says, Dear Mayor, telling us who that letter is for, and there's some information here in the letter. At the end of the letter, I see, Sincerely, Troy. And Troy must be the person who wrote this letter. So with the 2 letters I've showed you so far, they both have the date at the top. At the top, they also say who the letter is for. Then there's some information in the middle of the letter. And at the bottom, at the end, they both say who the letter is from. Let's look at our other 2 letters and see if they also have these things in common. I have letter number 3 was written on this date, June 12th, 2006. Here we have a clue that tells us who the letter is for. It says, Dear Mom, and then lots of information. Then it says, I love you, Therese. So it must be the date, when it was written, who the letter is for, and at the very bottom says who the letter was from. Oh boy, let's see if our last letter has all these things in common. Our last letter is the same one that's right behind me. At the top, it has the date, November 30th, 2020. Then it says, Dear Friend. Does it tell us who it's for? It's for a friend. Yeah, so far, all of our letters have a date, and they tell us who those letters are for. Then we have some information here, and at the end, it says, Your friend, Miss Neal. So it also tells us who this letter is from at the bottom. So boys and girls, those are some things that our letters have in common. When we think about what our letters look like, let's look at them again. Do they all kind of look the same? Let's look. We've got a date at the top. Then, who is the letter for? Then, some more information. And at the bottom, it says who the letter is from. And I notice that all of our letters look like that. They all start with a date at the top. So boys and girls, let me show you. We have a special word for the date at the top, and I'll show you here. It is called the heading, or the date. The heading or the date. So at the very tip top of our letter, we start with the heading or the date. And all the letters that we looked at had a date, didn't they? The next thing that all of our letters have in common is that they all tell us who that letter is for. Now, boys and girls, let me show you. That is called our greeting. When we look at who our letter is written for, that is our greeting. So we have gr, our letter team gr, e, t, and ing, I-N-G. Our greeting tells us who the letter is for. Awesome. Let's keep going. Something I noticed with the rest of our letters was that after our greeting, we had all this information in our letter. And that information in a letter is called the body. So just like a human, if you look at me, most of me is my body, right? My head is kind of small and my feet are kind of small, but as a human, most of my humanness is my body. And that is the same when we're talking about a letter. Most of the information in a letter is going to be in the body. And that is why it has the most stuff. And we remember body, just like our own body. B, A, D, E, Y at the end, body. I also noticed with our letters, boys and girls, that we had another thing in common. All of those letters said something like, from your friend, or sincerely, your friend, and I love you. So this part here at the end of a letter, your friend, we call that our closing. And that's because we're closing up the letter. We wrote everything we needed in our body, and then at the end, we have to make sure to close it in tight with a closing word or phrase. So our closing, there's one of our L blends, ing. Closing comes at the very end to close in our letter. Beautiful. And then lastly, my friends, every single letter that we looked at had one more thing in common. And that is that we have to make sure that we know who the letter is from. And we call that our signature. Who the letter is from is the signature. 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 So when we're looking and talking about writing a letter, these 5 things should be included. We must have the heading or the date at the very top. We must also have a greeting that tells us who the letter is for. We also want to make sure we have a body. And remember, just like me being a human, my body is most of me, and the body should be most of our letter too. Then at the end, we have a closing, and that's a phrase or a word that tells us who wrote the letter. I wrote it as your friend, so I closed it by saying I'm your friend. At the very end, we have our signature that has our name from Miss Neal. Now, friends, I'm going to pause really quick and move this tool, and then we'll talk about some different words to use for each of these things. Okie dokie, here we go. So with our heading and our date, That's pretty clear because we have to write the day that we wrote our letter. So for our heading and our date, it will always be the date that we wrote the letter. Today is December 1st, so we could write it like that. 12 is for December, 1 in 2020 could be a way to write our date. Now, a greeting, my friends, can be many different words. I noticed in the letters that we looked at that our greeting was the word dear. D-E-A-R. And dear, oh no, I wrote it right in the spot that you can't see. Let's write it again. D-E-A-R. Dear tells us who that letter could be for. We could say, dear class. What other ways could I say hello? I could say hello. Instead of the word dear, I could say hello, class. Instead of the word hello, I could say good afternoon, class. So you can change the words that you want to use to greet the person that you're writing to. You could say, dear friend. Hello, friend. Good afternoon, friend. Any other ideas that you have to say hello or have a greeting? You could just change instead of dear. Okay. Now the body, we'll talk about more next week, but with our body, we want to make sure that we tell some information and we ask some information. So when you're practicing your letters, I want to see if you can get the date, a greeting, and in your body, tell some information and ask some information. Now on our closing, let's draw a line so we can really see. For our closing, this is kind of like our greeting. We can say this in lots of different ways. We could say, your friend, because the letter is from your friend. We could say, from Mrs. Neal. F-R-O-M, from. We could say sincerely. That's a very common one that we read in letters. And the word sincerely means that I'm writing from a place of feeling sincere. And sincere is another fancy word for being honest. I'm writing from a place of sincere, feeling honest. So you could say it's from your friend. You could say from Miss Neal, or sincerely Miss Neal. Lots of different ways. Think of some other words that you know to say goodbye or close your letter. What about this one? Have a good day. Yeah, that could close our letter. Have a good day. Beautiful. And your signature, last thing on our list, is just your name. So we'll add that here. Signature is your name. Now, my friends, I know there's lots of information here, and we will spend lots of time digging into this stuff deeper. But for now, I want to challenge you to choose one person from the list that you've created of people that you might want to write a letter to, and I'm going to challenge you to start a letter draft that has all of these things: the heading or the date, the greeting, a body, closing, and a signature. And remember, you can always use our examples to help you if you're not sure where all these things belong in the letter, okay? All right. Thank you for checking in today, and let's go ahead and get started with some of your ideas for one person from your list of who would you like to write to, okay? Have a great day, my friends.